I came across teachers that would tell me that I was not going to be able to swim because of my race. And I was like, what do you mean? I'd never heard that, obviously. So they say, yeah, because Black people can't swim, they cannot float as much. And I was like, really? For me to start swimming, I had to stop chemically straightening my hair, which was a significant part of myself. Like I had been with straight hair for 30 years because that's what's imposed in my country. Then the cycling helmets wouldn't fit my hair, so I just have to keep like cutting it off to make it small. So all these barriers that I faced, we do a lot of work with the industry because I say I don't want to bring these women to the slaughter, right? I want to bring them into a sport that wants to welcome them.
Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Toughest Finish Line podcast with me, Jen Zone. So many people are talking about it being the off season in terms of sporting events at the moment, but we will not be stopping. We will keep on sharing the stories to inspire you. Today's guest has been through many toughest finish lines herself. However, today isn't just about sharing this. It's about sharing how she's doing some incredible work to support others with getting to their first finish lines. So I'd like to welcome to the podcast a lady who is helping so many others across their first finish lines, the chair of Women in Tri, Bianca Fernandez-Clark. Bianca, thank you so much for being here today. How are you doing?
Thank you for having me. I'm great. I'm excited. We talked about recording this podcast a long time ago, so I'm glad that we're finally making it happen.
Yes, I've been so excited to speak to you because you do some incredible work for women in triathlon, but also in running events, swim races, bike races. And we're going to talk about that in a lot more detail over the podcast. But I wanted to start with you as a person because you have quite a story about how you first got into sport and triathlon. So shall we start there? How did you first get into the world of sport?
Yeah, so it's incredible because a lot of people that know me today, they think I've always done sports. And in reality, it couldn't be like further from the truth. Like I was like that kid growing up that will like do anything to get out of PE.
Mhm.
And no, like honestly, you couldn't imagine how much I will try to get out of PE. Couldn't run for my life. I'm originally from the Dominican Republic, which also has like a lot of cultural barriers to sport. Like we have to have our hair chemically straight, so you couldn't really sweat, you cannot really learn how to swim. It's not like while sport is much more mainstream now, and it wasn't when I was growing up. So uh, maybe people will like know a lot of baseball players from the Dominican Republic, but so sports is seen like if you're from a poor, low socioeconomical background, you will do sports to try and better your life, but that would be like the only reason you will do sports, right?
Oh,
So,
okay.
so it wasn't like ladylike or anything to like be sweating or running around
Yeah.
a track. So I didn't grow up doing any sports. So I went to Spain to do a master's degree, and I was away from my family, away from my friends, new country, new challenges. And at age 29, I was just dealing with a lot of like mental health issues.
Mhm.
So I had lost a close family member. I had finished a long-term relationship at the time. So I was like really in a dark place. So I started going to therapy, and the therapy suggests like also like fill your time with something that is different to everything that you've done, something that's a challenge. And I was like straight A student, and so I was like, oh, learning a new language, all those things I felt will be easy. So I say,
Mhm.
you know what, like if I sign up to a 10K race, that will be extremely hard because I've never done any sports. So that definitely is completely outside of my comfort zone. So I downloaded a training plan from the internet. I had 3, 4 runs a week. My first run, it was like 2 minutes. That's all I could manage.
Wow.
And yeah, and then, but I just follow my plan, I just follow my plan, run walks, and then like 3 months after. The other thing is like I didn't discover that I was secretly sporty. I did this like it was just pretty humble beginnings, very slow. Spain, people are very athletic, everyone is very fast. So I couldn't really join any run clubs because I was just too
Right.
slow for anything. So I just had to do it by myself. And I was quite humbled, somebody that was used to excel. And now I was not. So, but when I did cross my finish line of that 10K race, 3 months after, in 1 hour and 15 minutes, I was static. It was the
Yeah.
best I have ever felt. I
Wow.
was felt so accomplished that I could run continuously for 10 kilometers when
Mhm.
3 months before all I could manage was 2 minutes. That, you start chasing that high, and it just transformed my life because a lot of things unraveled from there, including like,
Right.
okay, I just need to keep going. Then I found this virtual run club from the UK where I eventually met my husband.
No
So
way.
yes, so it's like my whole life transformed from that moment onwards, pretty much.
Wow, and it's funny because my story's similar in some ways that I was late getting into triathlon and were late getting into sport, but it has transformed my life. And you've met your husband; it's completely changed your career path and where you're going and what you're doing. It's amazing how just taking that little one step to do your first race, and I imagine it was quite, as you say, quite nerve wracking and that first race, how did you feel? Do you remember starting on the start line?
Honestly, I brought all my friends. It was like my wedding. It's like everybody come and watch me do this 10K race. So all my friends came to cheer me because it was such a big deal for me. Everybody knew what I was going through
Mhm.
and like what that meant. Um, I have very few things in my life that resonate with like that feeling of that day. It
Mhm.
was, it was incredible. And like, I was one of the last finishers because again, like Spain, like it's so close. Like 1 hour
Yeah.
15 is not even slow. They were dismantling the finish line, and I just
Oh, no.
yeah, but I just couldn't care. Like I felt like the winner, like
Mhm.
proper winner. So,
Wow.
and I was just hooked, like a live in
Yeah.
sport started right there.
Oh, amazing. And so you do obviously quite a few triathlons now, but is it right that you only learnt to swim as an adult?
Oh yeah, absolutely. So I was on this running when I started just running, and then I just did that for a few
Mhm.
years. And because it gets so hot, I was living in Madrid. It gets so hot in Madrid in the summer. So my work at the time, they were sponsoring a triathlon team. I actually didn't even know what triathlon was. So I somebody suggested that instead of like stop running altogether, somebody suggested like,
Mhm.
why don't you try triathlons in the summer? So I didn't know how to cycle and I didn't know how to swim. I didn't even have a bike. So I watched a Kona documentary. I was just Googling what is triathlon. So I came across a Kona documentary, this NBC that they used to do. And had done marathons by then, and I couldn't believe people will swim that long and cycle that long and then do a marathon
Yeah.
because at the time marathon was the hardest thing like I ever did. And I was wow, like that is insane. But yeah, the guys from that triathlon race team that was so you don't have to do that. Like there's this women's triathlon which is very small. It was a super sprint, so I went to the Decathlon, bought a 100-pound bike, and then signed up to my local leisure center for swimming lessons. And yeah, I just started to train for this 300-meter swim, 10K bike, and 2.5K run. And I loved every minute of that. It was so fun. A women only event was also like a great way to start because it was just, the sisterhood.
Yeah.
I loved it. And yeah, that's like that must have been probably 32 I was when I did that and started swimming. So that I'm still trying to swim though, at age 41.
No, but it just goes to show that no matter what your age, it's never too late. And you don't let just the fact that you're a bit nervous about one of the disciplines or doing something, or even if you've never done it before, you can start if it's something you want. You can make ways to do it. And the charity that you are chair of does so much of that, which again, I'm going to come back to in a little bit. But we can, if there is anybody who's listening who would like to follow in Bianca's footsteps and start out, then we've got some ways to help you coming up. But you've gone on to do so many sporting events, and literally nearly every weekend I'm like, oh, Bianca's at another race, and you've literally just done a race yesterday or Saturday, was it?
Yeah, yesterday did a duathlon. I wouldn't call it a race there. Like I would call it a training event. I just get really motivated by race environments.
Yeah.
And like even if I'm not training for that specific event, like I will push myself harder in that with other people in that
Yeah,
atmosphere.
absolutely.
So I just take every opportunity that I can just to be at a start line, and you get a lot of fitness from that
Yeah.
because I just don't push myself as hard, in my own training. But you pin a race number on me, and I just
Yeah.
mutate into something else.
Oh, but yes, you've done so many. So you've done multiple Ironmans. You've done races like Swim Serpentine as well. Have you got a favorite race that you remember that you absolutely loved doing?
I mean, I have so many, and for different reasons. I think, back when I was just doing marathons, so like New York and London Marathon, just something I've never experienced, that
Mhm.
uh, talk about high, runner's high, like those races were absolutely epic. But once I started dabbling in triathlon, so there's just two races that are like my favorite.
Mhm.
So with a very like uh random luck, I went to Kona. I was like, oh my god, this is like full circle, because Kona, watching the
Yeah.
documentary, is how I learned about triathlon.
Yeah.
And then in 2019 I got the opportunity to go. I've been twice. That was my first time, and I never experienced anything like that. Like, and I feel like my connection then to Kona like just became, like intertwined.
Yeah.
And then the other triathlon that is really, really my favorite, I will say it's Ironman Sweden. I It's just a fantastic race. Like the atmosphere is incredible, the run course, the town is beautiful. It does feel like a part. It does feel like the London Marathon
Mhm.
of triathlon.
Right.
So for different, well, whilst Kona is completely different, because in Kona, like that run, you're just like by yourself for so long.
Yeah.
So the challenge is being alone. The challenge is just pushing through this heat, these
Yeah.
sort of like brutal conditions. So I thought it was like the toughest finish line, but also one of the most ones that I felt the most accomplished. While Sweden, although it is still an item and it's still a long way, it felt that total London Marathon vibes of a race. So I will say those are like huge, like so special races. And to be fair, I will also go back to that first ever 10K,
Yeah.
because that was really a pivotal moment in my life. And
Yeah.
it was a very small race, but I just, just changed everything for me pretty much.
Yeah, yeah. It's those standout moments in races. You do remember those, and they keep you going and keep they just give you that bug for race life, doesn't it? And yeah. So you mentioned briefly there your toughest race, being Kona there, but are there any other examples or where you've thought I'm not going to make it or I'm going to struggle, and what was it that got you through that moment?
So I think, as I mentioned, I'm not like I don't have any athletic, background or anything.
Mhm.
And when I started doing sports, I didn't suddenly discover that I was really good. It was actually quite the opposite. I discovered I was actually really bad.
Yeah.
So I had to like really, really, really like, I've been chasing cutoffs, my whole life. And when I
Mhm.
did my first triathlon, like the whole thing, my first Ironman 70.3, when I signed up to that, for me, the challenge was going to be meet the cutoffs. So the thing that I do bring a lot is a lot of mental toughness
Mhm.
to whatever I do. So, and that's what has helped me, I guess, thrive in a sense, particularly in long events that you're like with yourselves for
Yeah.
12, 15 hours and wanting to quit at every single opportunity. And it's sort of like that internal dialogue.
Hmm.
And, like my bag of tricks is huge. So my bag of is just huge. So I can just pull uh, from very, very depth. I can really, really go deep into the pain cave and just talk myself through situations that are like, oh my God. In training, I'm just like, I'll give up. Like, I'm not doing
Yeah.
this. But in a
Yeah.
race, I just, like I say, all this mental toughness appears to get me through. Last year, I did right across Britain, which is, Lansing to John O'Groats. It was definitely I actually want to change my answer. That was definitely my toughest finish line. I mean, it rained for the whole 9 days. It was just
Oh my goodness.
yeah, and it was like a very hard way to do this ride because Lansing to General Growth is about like 1,000 miles. A lot of people do it in 14 days, even 3 weeks, but this event is in 9 days. So you're doing
Wow.
100 miles plus every single day. It rained every day. It was cold. It was miserable. I had saddle issues. I was injured. It was like cycling through pain for 9 days. And I really saw like darkness for a minute for a
Yeah.
lot of that. So I was one day taken out with hypothermia with the
Oh
medical
my
team.
goodness.
So but I got through that finish line. So it's sort of like and I cannot even put myself in that situation again because it took so much out of me.
Hmm.
But that is what I have. There's a lot of mental toughness that gets me through like really, really tough challenges. So
Hmm.
that's the only thing that I really like, 10 out of 10 I will give myself.
Yeah, just to keep going and push through. And oh, that sounds absolutely brutal of 9 days of rain and through the UK. And yes, incredible that you made it to that finish line. You kept going, and it is about just that continual talking yourself through it, isn't it? And tell yourself, I can do it. I can do it. I can keep going.
Well, every single day I will wake up not knowing if I was gonna get to the finish. Like every single, and like the sleep deprivation, you were up at 4 a.m. every day, going to bed at 10 p.m. So it was just a lot of, so every morning I would wake up and say, is this the day that I'm just not gonna like complete a stage? So I had to just, just divide every day. We had like 3 fit stops,
Hmm.
just get to the first fit stop and then
Yeah.
reassess, then get to the second fit stop and then reassess and get to this. And like it takes hours to get to these fit stops, We're talking like we were on the bike 10, 12 hours sometimes on the hilly
Hmm.
days and and it was just like every day I would just not know if I was gonna make it. So but yes, it was like I said, the bag of streak was very well extended for those 9 days. It was something I had never seen before, I would say.
Yeah. And so is that one thing that is in your bag of tricks about just breaking that race down into smaller, smaller chunks and just going, right, let's just get to the next bit. Let's just get to the next bit. Is that one of the strategies?
Definitely is one of the strategies. Definitely, particularly when I'm doing triathlons, it's just I just don't think of what's coming.
Hmm.
I just focus on what discipline I'm on, and I just have to get through this swim. And I'm a terrible swimmer, and I really don't like it. So I definitely have to stay present, of like just being this swim. Like this is all you need. For me, I just say this is all you need to do. Like if you want to quit in T1, that's okay, as long as you get through this swim.
Yeah.
So and then on the bike it's the same game of just like because if you just start thinking on a bike that I've done now 7 full distance triathlons. So if you start thinking on the bike that you have to do a marathon, like
Yeah.
that will that would be terrible, right? I just need to get through this 20K until the next aid station
Yeah.
and just sort of like I try to focus on also like I give myself a lot of jobs, like my
Okay.
nutrition, my
Yeah.
hydration, my position, check in with myself. So I try to like every 10, 15 minutes to have a little job to do.
I like
So
that.
yeah, so it's like, okay, what is my current task that I need to get through?
Yeah.
So yeah, so they just like tick over all this task, doing the bike ride, and then you go into the marathon, and then obviously the marathon is my favorite part of the full distance triathlons because I just feel really I just run really well off the bike.
Hmm.
So yeah, so then I'm like my goal just changes. I also know that I'll finish because I'm always concerned that I'll have a mechanical that like
Yeah,
something's gonna take me out on that bike.
absolutely.
Yeah, whilst on the road, I just relax. Now
Yeah.
you can just run and you'll know that you get to that finish. So
I've been wearing Luca's cycling kit for around a year now, and it's genuinely benefited my training so much. Luca is a premium women's cycling wear brand created by women for women. Born from the frustration of ill-fitting gear and the outdated shrink it and pink it approach, Luca is here to set a new standard. For performance, for design, and for women, their pieces are made to move with you. Crafted in Portugal from high performance Italian fabrics, tested by a community of female cyclists, and worn by GB athletes like Sian Rainsley. It's more than cycling wear. It's a movement towards empowerment, confidence, and redefining what women's sportswear should be. I've personally found Luca kit to be unbelievably comfortable, and particularly on those longer rides. But also, it looks amazing and is super functional. It really does motivate me to get out on my bike. As a listener of this podcast, you can use my code ToughestFinishLine to get a little something off your first order at rideluca.com. Absolutely. It's the fear that the bike could let you down on
yeah.
out on the bike or course, but the run, it's just down to you. So if you know that you can do it, you're getting to that finish line. So I mean, I think that's a great strategy of that, breaking it down. And also I love that about having a job to do each 15 minutes. I think that's a great strategy. So coming on then, we mentioned you are the chair of the amazing charity Women in Tri. Where shall we talk about the charity? Where did the idea first come from to start it? How did it get going?
So I think uh, the charity itself started. We're very young, we've only been going for 3 years, you wouldn't imagine, but I was always advocating and raising, being quite vocal about all the barriers that I was facing when I started doing the sport. I started with for my cultural values, that
Hmm.
would not allow that environment that I could learn sport growing up. But then when I did start, for example, when I was living in Spain and started running, like the fact that there was no space for being a slower beginner runner, it
Hmm.
was impossible to find any run clubs that I could join. Then I moved into the UK, which the UK has a much better diverse of abilities or run clubs, particular in better now, but obviously 10 years ago a little less. But it does has a little bit more, like you can be a beginner, you can go to parkrun and there's
Yeah.
peoples of all abilities. However, when I did start to swim and to cycle. So I came across teachers that will tell me that I was not going to be able to swim because of my race. And I was like, what do you mean? I'd never heard that. Obviously, I didn't grow up swimming. So I said,
Yeah.
yeah, because Black people can't swim, they cannot float as much. And I was like, really? And when I had this goal of like swimming, 2K, almost 2K for a 70.3, I said, well, we'll try, but I don't know if you're going to be able to do it. And I was like, but I've seen Black people do these events, not many, but I've
Yeah.
seen people of color. And that discouragement, that was incredible. And
Yeah.
so I met a different coach, a swimming coach, and she said, like, I'll make you a swimmer. And if it's the last thing I'll do in my life, I cannot believe somebody told you that.
Yeah.
And I persevered in trying to find that coach. But if somebody, I could have walked away. I could,
Absolutely.
I
Yeah.
could have said, oh, somebody told me I'm not going to be able to swim because I'm Black. So, like, that's it. Like, I'm a runner. Like, this triathlon sounds stupid anyway. So, why would I do that?
Mm.
Um, so that's kind of like I couldn't, obviously my hair, I had to, for me to start swimming, I had to stop chemically straightening my hair, which was a significant part of myself. Like I had been with straight hair for 30 years because that's what's
Hmm.
imposed in my country as
Right.
part of like, you know, the white supremacy that, Afro hair is not, well, we call it bad hair actually. So, and I had to let go of my bad hair and let go of my natural hair in order to learn to swim. And that was a significant because back
Yeah.
home I couldn't even have the job that I have in the UK. I couldn't have it back home with my natural hair. I
Wow.
work in banking, so back home it's like traditional, and you have to be like well dressed and totally polished. And bad hair is not one of those things that will be polished. So I couldn't even have my job like back home with my natural hair. And I said, okay, I need to let go if I want to learn to swim. Then the helmets, the cycling helmets, wouldn't fit my hair, so I just have to keep like cutting it off to make it small. And I just couldn't even like all these little barriers. And I was spending a ton of money because I had to pay for the swimming lessons to learn to swim. I had to buy
Mm,
my bike. I had to buy a wetsuit. And I was like, for a sport that I didn't even know I was going to like. I just,
yes. Yeah.
this like, I just didn't even know if I was going to stay in the sport. So for many years, I I was being quite vocal about all these barriers, the fact that, when I did Ironman Barcelona in 2021, I think there were like 5 people of color out of 2,000
Wow.
and 9% were women. So all these barriers about like why is this happening? And at the start, I really wasn't expected to have a platform, and I didn't have any followers, and it was just like my friends follow. But after George Floyd death, like a lot of people wanted to hear from Black voices around how did we find barriers everywhere.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
and a lot of people, I said like, oh my God, like my hair for swimming, my hair for cycling, being a woman, all these kind of things, like people started like listening. So, and I did like a lot of, like I think like, say, Ironman has a file on me or something. I used to tag them a lot because they will send me all these marketing emails, and it was always a man, and they would like try to sell me like a t-shirt or a jersey, and it was always going to be a man. It's like, dude, if you want me to spend like 60 quid in a t-shirt, at least can you put a woman wearing it?
Yeah.
Like, and I would
Yeah.
just go every day. I would just have like a marketing material of something that I received that, that will be, and I mean, it has changed, and that we have like slowly, and I don't want to say that was my work, but as a work of many women that then started
Absolutely.
speaking up
Yeah.
and say like, this is not okay. Like, you're a customer too. I'm paying the same race entry, etc. So I just always had all these being quite vocal about all these issues and all these barriers that I faced. And then in 2022, I actually went back to Kona. I qualified this time. And then there, out of complete coincidence, I saw an interview with a lady called Lynn Matix, that she had founded a charity. She lived in Kona, that they raise funds to pay for women's first ever triathlon, up to Olympic distance. And they had like sponsor like 40, 50 women every year. And I just love that. And I just literally hunted her down all of Kona, sending her DMs like, please, can we meet? I'm here for the Ironman, but I'm going to obviously leaving afterwards. But can we have a coffee?
Yeah.
Just to like get the rights to start at the time Fund Her Try UK to do exactly the same, because I said even that is just it's particularly with the prices of race entries in
Yeah.
triathlon, that is such a big barrier already. Like, you have to buy a
Absolutely.
bike, you have to buy a wetsuit, you have to learn. Like, if you come from like myself that had to do all these steps, I said, if we can take care of the race entry, how amazing. That's like already a barrier that we're removing. So
Yeah.
that's how we started, and it was always meant to be just that. So I just like my brain, just goes at incredible fast paces.
Right.
So, but I came back from Kona, and I said like, I just want to like sponsor 25 women next year to do the first triathlon. And that was the goal. It was just, that was supposed to be that small charity 3 years ago that now is a giant today.
Yes, and it's so inspiring hearing how it started, because it has become so much bigger, which we will touch on again in a bit. But I just, from my point of view, I got involved with Women in Tri in April time, I think it was. And, I had seen bits and pieces people having conversations and chatting to other athletes of their experience with barriers, and I just found it mind blowing when I started hearing even more about the barriers, because again, you don't necessarily know what you don't know. And obviously being white, my hair is different. I can fit it in swim hats. And I was like, I'd never even thought about, different hair types fitting in swim hats. It hadn't, and that's my naivety for sure. And it has, one of the things it's done for me is just opened up my eyes. And there's so many more barriers that are out there, for me as a mum, getting into triathlon, and, if you're breastfeeding or if you're pregnant, deferring entries, there's so many barriers
Of course.
there as well. And like the financial aspect is definitely one of them. And sadly, it's reflected in the numbers, isn't it? That, there was an article in the Ironman themselves did in 2024 to 2025 that women made up only 18% of Ironman participants and only 26% in 70.3 distances, which is tiny. And then you guys did a report, so Women in Tri and She Races, that was, I think, the end of December, where you highlighted that in the UK, female participation in triathlon was 32%,
Yep.
which is higher, but it's still a way away from that 50-50 split, or having that
Absolutely. Yeah.
equal participation, which is really sad. And that's why when I found out about Women in Tri, I was like, yes, I love this, because it's just helping so much with breaking down those barriers. And you mentioned it's become a bit of a giant now, because it's not just race
Funding entries.
entries.
Yes.
No, it's not just. So what is some of the other work that Women in Tri does?
So obviously our growth was quite fast, and you can see that it was a product that women needed, right? So I'm very, very proud of that. So
Yeah.
basically, the first program that we started alongside the first triathlon was a mentoring program, because the mentoring program wanted to talk women's confidence pretty much, and like all the questions that you're doing, like, how do I train, around childcare, how do I train, how do I race around my period, all those
Hmm.
questions that are like, if you join a traditional triathlon club, which is gonna be largely male dominated, you might feel that that's not a space for you to ask some like
Yeah.
women specific questions. I felt that as a beginner, like everyone was really pro, so my questions were like very, very basic, and I'm pretty sure everyone would be happy to answer, but I just didn't feel
Yeah.
like I could do it really. Like everybody know
Yeah.
how to set up a transition, and I was like, oh my God, I should know this too. But actually I didn't. Um so we wanted to create a mentoring program alongside it, which was going to pair beginner triathletes, so women who had been in the sport completely new, under 3 years, or maybe even more, but consider themselves beginners, with experienced women that have done all of it, that have
Hmm.
learned everything and could share that experience. So, and and the good thing about that program is that obviously it didn't matter if you had done a triathlon. Our first triathlon program is only for women who have never done one, whilst our
Hmm.
mentoring program is for women who like, I've done a sprint, but I want to move to a standard, or I want to do my first item. So it's like it's a broad
Yeah.
scope. So then we started with those two, and then we just had a small WhatsApp chat with our first timers, because basically they kept emailing us like, okay, you gave me a race entry, but I don't know anything else.
Yeah.
I Please help us, please, I have this question and I don't understand what's a race license, and what does this mean that I cannot draft, like, because we're talking people who are literally coming from like zero. Triathlon is
Absolutely.
quite knowledge heavy, so,
Absolutely. Yeah.
it's not like running, you just go and run, and there's like all these rules and all this that you have to know. So we started creating this WhatsApp group with, it was just our first timers and obviously the volunteers at the time, that our committee at the time, which was quite small. And it was just to help them, help them do
Mhm.
their first triathlon. And then we just kept getting DMs from people like, look, you didn't sponsor me, but I heard about your WhatsApp. Can I join, please? I don't mind. I just want to have a place to ask questions. I want to connect with other first timers because I'm so scared. And then we said like, okay, so we have to have a process to create, this safe space that everyone can join. So then we created
Yeah.
what's called our community. So our community is largely virtual. So anyone can apply, but our target is beginner women. But if you're an
Mhm.
experienced woman, you can also join as long as you're happy with all the beginner questions that are there.
Absolutely, yeah.
And today 600. It was like 42 years ago, and today it's
Yeah.
over 600 women. I like the feedback that one of our ladies gave me. That she says like, I have all the chats muted because it's so busy, but every time I'm feeling down and gloomy, I just go and
Yeah.
open it just to feel better because it's so much support, so much advice.
Love that.
It's just such a positive space, and that has been instrumental. Like I have met probably 10% of the women in our community, but everybody has a question and they just pop it in there, and it's celebrated, it's asked, replied, 20 responses from our mentors or somebody who has gone through the same thing, people who are navigating any challenges, they post it
Mhm.
in there. So the community is one of our programs as well. It's now we capture a lot of data from it. It's a formal joining process. It's free, but because we want to keep it a safe space, so
Yeah.
we have make sure that it's women joining, etc. Um, so we have our first triathlon, our mentoring, our community, but then advocacy remains at the heart of what I do. I
Mhm.
want to change the sport. So all these barriers that I faced, I we do a lot of work with the industry too, because I say I don't want to bring these women to the slaughter, right? I want to bring them
Yeah.
to a sport that wants to welcome them. So all what you mentioned, pregnancy deferrals, peer
Mm.
products, women's toilets, making sure that your race have decent cutoffs. So I don't, the trauma that I felt, like, am I gonna miss a cutoff? My first swim, 70.3 swim was 104. The cutoff was 110.
Wow.
I was quite close to it, and that created so much anxiety training for it. And I still went for it because I said, like, look, if I don't make it, I don't make it. But many women will say, I won't even try because I'm
Yeah.
not going to spend all this money, all this training,
Absolutely, yeah.
just like doing something that doesn't seem like I'm going to be able to meet. So making sure the race have decent cutoff. So we have an event partnership scheme where we work very hard with events across the UK and abroad, making sure that event caters for women in a diversity of abilities.
Yeah.
Marketing materials, make sure you're representing, a diverse group of athletes, and diverse is not just men and women, it's also diverse body types, diverse abilities, diverse race. So that I can see myself, in your event.
Mhm.
So that's part of our invisible work, I will say, because women out there might not know that they have had a better race experience because of our work. They're not in our community. They might not even know who Women in Tri is. And that has
Yeah.
been our work on the background. We provide a ton of resources for the women in our community, training plans. Obviously, you and Shelly take care of something that's very important for me, which is webinars.
Mhm.
So educational resources that if you are affluent enough to be able to afford a coach and afford all this knowledge, you might know what to do with nutrition, what to do with
Yeah.
equipment. But if you don't, then we put these resources out there. Every month we have a webinar on a topic that as a triathlete you should know. So, and thank you, Jen. I want to take that
Oh, you're
opportunity
welcome.
for volunteering, in supporting that program. So we have all of these resources, training plans, uh, we're also starting working a little bit more about sustainability. So we have a very active, buy, sell, donate group where triathletes just hand out so much kit. The
Yeah.
moment you upgrade, everything becomes irrelevant. And
Oh, yeah.
instead of creating more stuff, more landfill, more waste, it's passed over in the community. And we also receive donations from the triathlon community that we're also able to send to a beginner triathlete that then they don't need to buy all this equipment from start. So I counted last week we have about 12 initiatives, programs running around women in
Wow.
try. In yes, including our inclusive coaching sessions, which have been currently in London, but we're extending it to Bristol as well, where we're trying to provide a space to be a beginner, a space where you will never be
Mhm.
dropped. Will get access to a coach, and also our community is community led. So we have people anywhere in the country that will tell me, it's like, we have a regional chat, so they will say, "Oh, do you want to guys want to go together for a cycle? Because I don't have
Yeah.
a local cycling club that I can join." They go together for a cycle. They go together for a swim. So it's been great to see also these regional groups forming, because we know outside of London it's even worse. To have opportunities as women to train with other women. So our community, because it's community led, we are empowering women. We're going to be giving them training next year so they can take on their own groups, be safe, make
Yeah.
sure that they have, safeguarding in place, that they don't know how to like take a group of athletes, out there. So to continue just expanding on the regions as well, a little bit of what we have in London.
I mean, Bianca, I knew a lot of it, and I've always just been in awe that not only do you work in banking, but then you've set up this absolutely incredible thing for women. I just don't know how you do it with the time on top of training. I really want to know exactly your tricks of the trade for getting it in, but it's amazing because not only is this opening so many doors for people who previously wouldn't have been able to get into the world of triathlon, it's also the knock-on impacts of that for, we know how sport and fitness on personal levels, we know how it helps mental health. We know how it boosts social interaction and that meeting of people, and that it prevents that loneliness and side of it. So the knock-on effect, it's not just about getting women into sport, it's helping all the wider areas that come with it as well. So it's so inspiring, and I've, on a personal level, I've absolutely loved being part of Women Try, because, as I say, like the groups are busy in terms of the text and things, so I have them muted. But then, as you said, that you can drip in and out of them, and I'm getting tips and strategies myself from women, and it's that safe space. It doesn't feel judgmental in any way. You can ask those questions, and we all had to start somewhere, didn't we?
Absolutely.
Like, I had no idea what clipping pedals were and drafting. I was like, how do you even work that out? And so just having that place where you can ask those questions. And so thank you to you for doing this for women, because it's so inspiring and supportive. And as you mentioned, we are seeing it roll out more in races. So I know you and I spoke. We were texting about in an Ironman Leeds. I was queuing up for the toilets in along the course, and a guy said to me, "He's like, there's a women's only toilet just there." I was like, "What? I
Exactly.
can't believe this!" And it had sanitary towels in it. It had everything that I needed for that race. And even in Kona this year at the World
Yep.
Championships, it was the first time that I'd seen that there was a lactation station, so women who were breastfeeding could go and feed or help their race to be more comfortable. So, and that is down to that invisible work that you talk about.
Yep. One of our
Of
athletes used it. Yeah, one of our athletes was 7 months
Oh,
postpartum in Kona.
really?
Yeah, so, Svenja, she was, part of the panel talking, and she went into the lactation. She said, "I'm gonna have the longest transition because I'm gonna be pumping." But, it's sort of like it's kinda like raising awareness of all this,
Yeah.
of everything that, like, oh my God, as a woman, it's not that, it's just that the sport is just not designed with us in mind. And one other thing, like, we also focus on swim, bike, run as individual
Hmm.
sports. Like,
Yes.
people
Yeah.
don't need to be a triathlete to join us. Multi-sport is, some of the women in our community only do aqua bike because for whatever reason they cannot run, or some of them just do aquathlon because they don't know how to cycle.
Yeah.
And it's absolutely okay. Like, you swim, bike, run, and all these three sports have their own barriers. So once we tackle them individually, it's easier to then just bring women to, like, "Oh, do you want to try multisport?" And then
Yeah.
that's how sort of like it begins. So,
Yeah, yeah, and some of the access to races that you've done, you've got a group going to the London Marathon this coming
Yes.
year, haven't you? Which is really exciting. And I think there's so much that is happening, but there is a long way to go, isn't there, in terms of support for women? So what type of things are you thinking that races could be doing more of to support women? What are we still working towards?
So a lot of the races that we speak to, they actually just haven't thought about the
Mhm.
needs of women. You know, it's not that they intentionally wanted to
No,
have the race
no.
designed for men, is just how it's been, right? So particularly when women are the minority in the sport. So our guidelines is the best that races can do, and we've simplified the process to be a partner. So basically, anyone who wants to implement our guidelines, which, as you mentioned, you know, that report that we did with She Races highlighted all the barriers for women entering events. You know, these are women
Mhm.
who are either triathletes or are wanting to do a triathlon and are in that registration page, and they just say no. And so we spoke with those women and to understand those barriers. And a lot of the barriers were so simple, where it's like
Yeah.
I couldn't find information about how long the race was going to last, how work was going to start, and I needed to sort childcare. So because I couldn't figure that out, I just like went to another. So it's
Yeah.
so it just needs a page on your website, right? With so a lot of the changes are very, very simple. So, and we simplify our event partnership scheme. So if you want to follow our guidelines, which are so simple, you know, you can
Mhm.
just self-assess against them. You can read everything that you can put in place and self-assess against them, and then you become a partner of us. So, and that just signals that your event, you know, has a corporate responsibility around making sure that it's also catering for women.
Yeah.
Uh, so that is the best thing, you know, just making sure that that they're open to that feedback. And a lot of the changes are quite small.
Yeah.
Others are hugely significant, like a pregnancy policy. You know, I'm not a mom, which is you talking about how I do it is because I don't have childcare
Yeah.
responsibilities. All I do is work and women in try and my training. So women in try is
All
my
you do, Bianca, that's still an awful lot.
it is, but, you know, like, women are busy, right? Like,
Yeah.
so, but no woman, like, although I'm not a mom myself, like, of course, I'm advocating for a woman that becomes pregnant not to lose hundreds of pounds sometimes in a race entry because you don't allow them to defer. Pregnancy deferrals are mainstream now, but they didn't exist like three,
No.
4 years ago. So we
No, they
know,
didn't.
yeah. So on our survey, I think from women that became pregnant, 75% of them lost their race entry, at least one race entry,
Wow.
which is like you're penalizing women, which are already, you know, marginalized in the sport because of all of the inequalities that
Yeah.
exist. And it's sort of once they do implement it, is so few women that actually need it from the whole. So it makes no difference to the race to roll. Oh yes, just come back in 2 years and do it. It makes so little difference because it's such a small proportion of women who actually need it. But they actually then saw an increase in entries because women said like, oh, now I can enter your event because if I do become pregnant, I'm not going to lose the money. So it
Mhm.
becomes actually a commercial benefit for the race, and
Absolutely.
and they had to see that. So that is the best that that events can do. Obviously, the industry as a whole, there's wider work that we do with British Triathlon, with governing bodies, you know, around policies, around, for example, race tattoos. You know, we have a lot of Muslim athletes in our community. They cannot have race tattoos because they don't have bare arms. So your race needs to accommodate that race tattoos on your arms should only be required if you are able to
Able
have bare
to,
arms.
yeah.
So it's like all those small changes that just need to happen in the sport. That when you have a wide, diverse pool of athletes you can race. I know the women from our community told us that, and they
Mhm.
told us about needing, for example, changing facilities. You know, the same case for Muslim women because they need to go from the swim to the cycle without removing their swim hat if they are hijabi wearers women.
Mhm.
So something like putting a changing tent, which costs no money, already opens the sport to a lot of Muslim women who otherwise would not have been able to do it. So it's sort of like
Yeah.
our guidelines are so simple and yet so effective. So, events out there can just implement them and immediately they become more diverse.
Yeah, which is so amazing that you've got those guidelines there. And again, it's not that they're not doing it on purpose, is it? It's just sometimes that people don't know, and because it's been the norm of that's how it's been. They haven't necessarily considered tattoos or feeding stations or anything like that. So just having somebody championing it and pushing it forward is we are so grateful for. So coming to a close then, just one question I wanted to ask you was what have you got a proudest moment, Bianca? What are you proud of?
Personally or women in tri related? Uh,
Personally, in terms of
Person.
something, what are you most proudest of? Because you've done some incredible things, and I just, in terms of what's your biggest moment, what are you proudest of?
Oof, that's a tough one because uh, there's so many challenges that I've done, like not knowing if I was gonna finish.
Hmm.
Uh, that finishing was incredible. It really, really made me believe that I could do anything. So I would say, finish when I finished my second Kona, I didn't know, but I was racing with COVID. So I had trained so hard for that race, and on the day I was just feeling so off, and I couldn't understand that. And obviously Kona is hot and it's difficult, but I was just feeling like extra everything. And it was such a challenging day, um, and then I flew back very, very sick on the plane, and then I tested when I came back to London. I had been positive with COVID. I said, "My God, the I was like lightheaded, on parts of the run." I told my husband like, I'm either gonna finish on a medical tent or I'm gonna finish on the finish line because it was so. And so when I finished on the finish line, I was
Great job.
so proud, but then when I knew what I had gone through days after, that was just maximized of like, "Oh my
Yeah,
god, you really, really went so deep, training so ill." So, it was incredibly proud moment for me. Yes, I completing Lancet to Journal Girls last year,
yeah,
cycling through so much adversity, saddle sore, neck sore, injury, weather. I that was that it's in fact is something that I actually never want to do again. Like I think it was just so hard.
wow,
Yeah, I never want to try it again. So that finish
gosh,
line was just epic. So and yeah, I think that I have I have had a lot of moments, that those finish line have been really, really. I'm sorry I didn't probably answer the question very well, but
but I think it's just showing that there's going to be multiple moments where you look back and you just go, I got there. I managed to do it despite
yeah.
everything going on that tried to knock me off my bike or set me back or hold me back. I've kept going. And so it leads me very nicely to my last question for you, Bianca, in terms of what advice would you give to somebody who might be considering doing their first triathlon? What would you say to them?
Well, it has to be join women in tri, right? like,
Little
like we
and
have we
how would they do that, Bianca? Little plug for you.
Yeah, I mean, because we got you covered, girl. Just come to us. So you can find us on Instagram or on our website. And again, don't be overwhelmed about triathlon. Like if you're a swimmer, if you're a cyclist, if you're a runner, or if you're none of them
None
but
of
would
those,
like
yeah.
to do it in sport, you can still join our community. We have a wealth of support for women starting their journey in swim, bike, run. Uh, and then if you do want to do your first triathlon, we have the first triathlon program, which is open right now, which, thanks to the generosity of many event partners, we're able to sponsor the race entry for women doing the first ever event. So definitely check out our program, or if you already signed up, then check out our mentoring program, which is also open at the moment, and you will get, support one-on-one or two-to-one with an experienced woman who has done it all and can guide you through your first triathlon. And we have a even if you don't do any of that, we still have training plans, webinars, a lot of resources, and you don't even need to be in our community for some of this to be of use of any woman out there. And my DMs are always open. I have like unlimited amount of time to for any woman out there that would like to do something and it's feeling just like that needs that little notch. Um, it was quite funny yesterday that I did this duathlon. You know, we had a lady from our community, she's called Jennifer too. So she's done many marathons, but she went to do the smallest duathlon distance because she said, I don't know if I'm gonna do 5K after I've done a bike. So, you know, so it's like all that confidence, like of course you can do that. Like of course you like
Yeah.
so strong. So we cancel ourselves as women a lot because
Hmm.
we don't believe in our abilities. We need validation that we can do something before we do it. So it's, you know, my attitude, I'll just do it. And if I cannot do it, it's fine. It's not how a lot of women, you know, respond. A lot of women say, no, 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 I need to be like totally qualified in order to do this thing. So I do have a lot of time for those women and to tell them how strong they are, how capable they are, and you know, yes, that they just need to put themselves out there, put the training, put their mental strength, and they will get to that finish line. So yes, definitely for all women out there, you know, please check us out at Women in Tri UK, or feel free to send me a DM at Bianca Triathlon as well with any help or support that you might need.
And just go for it. As you say, put yourself out there and just go for it. Oh, Bianca, thank you so, so much for coming on and speaking today. It's so inspiring the work that you're doing. And a huge thank you from one female to another for putting all this in, because definitely I've seen it in terms of my races already coming out, the work that you're doing. So a huge thank you for today.
Thank you so much, Jen, for having me.